friends. Bethany Bravery here. Welcome back to another episode of the Bringing Her Hope podcast. I'm excited. We have two guests today, which is exciting. And Kelsey is actually a return guest. She was in season 1, so I'll make sure and put the link in the show notes if you want to watch her episode. We talk all about removing labels. But this is Kelsey and Chad Wallen. Thanks so much for being on the show, guys.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, since it's been a little while since at least you've been on the podcast, Kelsey?
Yeah. Do you want to share or do you want me to?
You do it.
All right. As Bethany said, I'm Kelsey, and this is my husband, Chad. We've been married 9.5 years. Yep. We just went through this the other day. Yep. We couldn't remember. We live in Texas, and we have 3 little girls biologically. Naomi is 8, Zoe is 6, and Quinley is 5. We also have a 22-year-old that lives with us. We call her our oldest adopted daughter. We moved here to Texas from Oregon about 3 years ago, and she moved with us. So she lives with us. And then right now we have a little baby who is 2.5 months old through foster care, and he is just a joy. Well, right now he has a cold, so he's a little difficult, but normally he's an absolute joy. So we, like I said, we live in Texas. We have been here about 3 years. Chad gets to run a nonprofit ministry that we started up together, full-time. I work full-time. And yeah, we just kind of do life.
Wear lots of hats. I love it. So today we're going to be talking about what it looks like to be able to serve ministry while having a family. I think a lot of us think we've got to do this before, we have kids, or maybe wait till kids are, out of the house, but y'all are partnering and doing it with your children, and you are just pivoting when God tells you to pivot. And I just know, just from observing, I guess I would say, your story, you guys just do what he calls you to do. And so I want to lean into your story. Why don't you guys share a little bit about what this journey has looked like serving in ministry as a family?
Yeah. Can we take it again?
Yeah. I mean, it's so ministry, I think that actually started just before we started dating, that both of us were kind of starting that path of ministry. And I know it all started with God, what do you want from me? Conversation. Mine was, I felt was really clear, but God took me on a couple loops before he took me where I was supposed to be. I remember praying about it and feeling like the Lord saying, yep. Well, let me rephrase that. I thought I was being told I was going to go overseas and do ministry overseas. That's what sounded good. It sounded fun. And God said, well, yes and no. I'm going to start you off in kids ministry, children's ministry, or whatever, at church, and then also in divorce recovery ministry. And that's how we met, right? So Bethany and I met was through that. And so I sat in there for a little bit, and then that's when God opened up the doors for overseas to be able to go serve a ministry in Thailand that rescues children that are at risk of being sold into the sex trade. And so, kind of
that's how we met, was on that mission trip over to Thailand.
Yeah. So the funny thing about that whole story is I was serving the 4 and 5-year-olds at a church in Eugene, Oregon, and she was serving 4 and 5-year-olds at a church in Portland, Oregon. And so it's just like, wait a second, we're both serving the same group of kids, and then we come together and we're serving the same ministry for kids. So that's kind of how our story started. That's how it kicked off, and then realized how much we're in tune just with the, it kind of all got dialed down to the orphan and the widow has really kind of dialed into where both of our hearts have laid. So it's all different aspects of the orphan and the widow, but yeah, that's kind of where we kicked off.
Yeah. And so that kind of started the foundation of our dating season, our early marriage season. All of that was really kind of with this heart of how do we serve? And I don't think at the time we necessarily were like, oh, okay, we're going to get into, caring for the orphan and the widow. It just, like, looking back and seeing how God orchestrated that kind of just as a common thread throughout all of the things that we've done in our life. We got married, what was it, like 9 months after we started dating? I don't know, something pretty, we got married pretty quick. And then as we were dating and all of that, we had talks of like, okay, well, what do we want our family to look like? How many kids, all that. And so I always had in my mind, I wanted to have 2 and adopt 2 kids. And so he's like, sure. Okay. So we get married, and then our church in Beaverton offered a Saturday event, and it was called Father to the Fatherless, and it was all about mentoring, fostering, and adoption. And so I said, hey, or you said, somehow we ended up deciding to go because we were interested in eventually adopting. So we went and we listened. He really wanted to go for mentoring. He had a heart for mentoring. Like I said, I was more into the adoption side of things.
Young men specifically.
Yeah, young men. Specifically, yeah. And so then somehow we wound up in the breakout session for foster care. And totally the Lord just orchestrating our steps. And I just remember still to this day, that was 9 years ago. Yeah. Still to this day, I can remember there was a young man that shared that was still in the foster system, but he was like 17. He was about to age out. And he just shared his experience. And I totally get chills just even thinking about it. Like, he just shared his experience of what he's gone through being in the system for ever, and what that looks like for him aging out of the system. And so we both walked out of that weekend and said, well, we need to foster. So that was on a Saturday. We were gung-ho, yep, let's foster. Monday, I took a pregnancy test and found out I was pregnant.
Surprise!
We're like, okay, Lord, like, now what? Like, we're what, 2-3 months married at this point, super young in our marriage.
3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. We were, just found out we were going to have our own. And so we felt like the Lord is just leading us to continue to pursue fostering. It takes a good amount of time, typically about 6 months up to a year, to be able to go through all your classes to get certified to foster. So we said, okay, well, let's just keep pursuing this and kind of, start to work on all of that, so that as soon as God says yes, then we can run. So that we kind of worked on that throughout the year of like pregnancy, and then just when she was first born. And when she was 9 months old, I believe, 8, 9.
She was 11 months.
11 months. Okay. We both independently felt like the Lord was calling us to finish the certification to be able to foster.
That was 9 months.
That was 9 months. Okay.
Yeah, we got our first to it
when she was 11. Yeah. So we both, independently, and then came together and said, hey, that's exactly what the Lord's been leading me into. So, all right, let's do it. So yeah, we got our first placement when she was 11 months old, when our youngest biological daughter was 11 months old. Our oldest. And so we got 2 girls, 8 and 10. And it was, it was a roller coaster.
Shock to the system.
Little shock to the system, but just amazing. And but the thing that I like to share with people, and kind of what you touched on, Bethany, is she was 10 months old and she's 8 and a half, and all she's known is a life of fostering, and serving. And obviously we have different avenues now with advanced camp, with mentoring, with all sorts of different things of other areas where we're serving. But that was just ingrained from the get-go. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that. I mean, I don't think there's ever a oh, you're too late, but the character and quality of different pieces of Naomi that I see that stem directly from that servanthood is just amazing to me. And it's nothing we've done. I mean, it's literally, I'm like, how did you know to take care of them like that? Like, it's nothing we've done intentionally. It's more of just been, this is our family. Yeah. And a while back, I started a blog that I called Just a Normal Foster Family. And really that was what it came down to, is like, I just want to normalize the fact that families can foster, they can be in ministry, they can start a church, they can, whatever it is that they're wanting to do with their kids. And we get asked pretty often, I feel like, well, what's been the impact of foster care on your kids? I'm going to wait till they're out of the house, or I'm going to wait till they're in high school or whatever. And I'm like, well, first of all, we've had to be pretty strategic in the different kiddos that we've taken through placements. For the longest time, we only did older sibling sets. And so they were like 8, 10, 12-year-old kids. And then we had a season where we had a really young, a baby, which was great. And then when we moved to Texas, we took a placement that the 2 boys were the same age as our biological girls. That was a terrible idea.
That was terrible.
Highly recommend never doing that. But I mean, overall, obviously, things went well. Eventually it was probably our hardest probably second hardest placement set that we've had.
Yeah.
So we've had to be strategic in that of like, okay, we're not going to take kids that are the same age as our kids anymore, because
especially at that age, they're 4, 4, 5, 5, and 7.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
It was a zoo.
Yeah. And
I didn't realize how loud your house could be with that many young kids. Like, the silence was.
It was like summer camp.
It was
like summer camp, 24/7.
Yeah.
But anyways, and that's when COVID hit too. So we were all home, doing virtual learning at home and whatever else. It was nuts.
Virtual learning.
Yeah. didn't happen. Anyways, so I share all that to say, like, we've tried to be strategic in what we've said yes to, and does this make sense for our family? And we've had to take a lot of breaks. Every time that we had kiddos leave, to either a different placement or adoptive resource, back to mom, whatever it may be, we always take an extended break, whether that's a month, whether that's 6 months, whatever that looks like. And that's our family's chance to recharge. Mm-hmm. And that's our family's chance to say, okay, this is our core unit. And when we are all ready, I mean, they're like you said, they're only 8, 6, and 5, but they all get a say, and so once we're all ready to say yes again, then we'll put our name back in, to get more kiddos. But it has to be a joint conversation. Yeah. And we talked to the girls about, hey, like with foster care specifically, you can set like age ranges or gender preferences, that sort of a thing. So we have those conversations with the girls too, of like, hey, what do y'all think about doing a baby, or what do you think about doing older kids, or, that kind of a thing. And so they all get their say in that too.
They said they wanted a little brother, and we
got a little brother.
Yeah. We definitely, they have to have buy-in on it, right? Yeah. So it's, there's consequences if you don't have buy-in, that they hold it against you. Resentment or whatever that looks like. And, we got to stay in tune with our kids though, because we start seeing behavioral stuff, attitude stuff, because now they're losing attention. And the guy, he's pretty good, but for the first month of his life, he was uphill climb. And so he needed a lot of attention, just like any baby does, but he came out of a pretty rough situation. And so that attention that was given to him was not given to them. And so now you have to they have to compensate for that, right? Mm-hmm. So more daddy-daughter dates, more mommy-daughter dates, more intentional stuff. So I think that's one thing that I think people go into ministry, they forget about the fact that they're giving up something to do something. And when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else.
Absolutely.
And so that's one thing we've been very intentional about is with our girls is making sure that they are just as valued as whoever we're serving. So, advanced camp can take up a lot of time, but then I also do things with them that is encouraging the love for advanced camp, that I have for it.
Yeah, I was going to say to that point too, we're really cautious about how we talk about these different things that we're doing. Like when he's gone, in Oregon, doing advanced camp in Oregon, I never blame advanced camp. Like I'm really intentional. Like the girls will be like, man, I missed Dad, or why does he have to leave, or, whatever. And I try to be super intentional with, hey, we get to serve people through advanced camp, and never saying, well, if your dad was around more, or, well, he's gone again for advanced camp, like just that kind of thing. Like that just doesn't happen. And same thing with foster care. Like, I feel like we try to paint that in a really positive light, not we have yet another meeting or another caseworker coming over or whatever, but instead it's like, hey, we get to do this. And, cause I never want the girls to think back to their childhood and think, oh, well, Dad cared more about advanced camp than me. Or Dad cared, or Mom and Dad cared about foster care more than me, or whatever it may be. So how we talk about those things is crucial, I think.
To someone who's maybe listening or watching right now, and they're like, man, it seems like Kelsey and Chad are just so in alignment and so can hear from the Lord exactly the same thing. What would you say to the couple? Maybe there's one spouse that's like, okay, I want to do this ministry together, whatever it is, and the other person isn't on the same page. What would y'all say to them?
Don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, until you're in sync,
you have to be.
Yeah. I literally, I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty of times in our almost 10 years of being in ministry together where we have not been in alignment, and we don't take that step until we are. And sometimes that means I'm waiting, and sometimes that means I'm praying a lot that God would change his heart to be in alignment for what I think, and ultimately I'm asking God to have both of our hearts in alignment with what he wants. But we do not move until we are in sync. And I think that I can't even think of a time that we have done anything and had a negative repercussion or anything like that. But
I mean,
I've just seen it before, of like in friends or whatever, where it's like one is gung ho ready to do it and the other one isn't. Nurture that and help them to be open to it. Like we have friends that'll ask, like, the wife is really into wanting to foster and the other one, the husband, is like, heck no. I'm like, okay, well, dip your feet in, like ask, provide respite for our foster family so that the husband can see these are just normal kids, or we'll have them over for dinner and we'll talk openly about our experience.
That's what I was going to say, is we open up that conversation with them. So I do think, I would say statistically, probably 75% of the time, it's the man that doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of wives that will reach out to Kelsey, or if I know them through church, they'll reach out to me like, can you talk to my husband for me? I'm like, yeah, I will. Because it is scary. You got somebody else's kids. You don't want your castle disturbed,
It's good.
So, being able to speak into that for one, it's not as scary. And the pluses are more powerful than the negatives.
That's good. Chad, what would you say to the wife, maybe who's wanting to step into ministry, but she's waiting. She's kind of in the posture that Kelsey was talking about. She's praying about it. She's seeing if God's going to change, the man's heart. What could she be doing to support or also make him feel heard in that situation?
I think that's the big part of it, is for him to feel heard, that she's asking good questions. I know guys don't like to talk a whole lot, so it's
not you.
How much time do we have on this podcast? No, I think it is. I think the big part is we want to be heard. Like, most guys don't want to express fears, but honestly, I have fears, especially in foster care. There's a lot of unanswered questions. You have a young man or a little kid that comes in the house that you don't know their history, you don't know their past. And so I think that's one thing, is you got to talk to them, find out their fears. I think the other big thing is that he doesn't want to be stuck alone with like they're doing the battle on their own. That's the butterflies and rainbows. We got a baby, but then, in the middle of the night, am I dealing with this thing, or, is this a team thing? So I think they want to know that they're not in it alone. And as much as guys push away community, if there's any guys listening, it's like, man, get a community before you do this.
Yeah.
I have an incredible community now. If I came across a struggle or a burden or a frustration, I got a community of guys that, we can go out and go fishing and vent about, life, right? So we just, or get refreshed, or call up a group of guys and I know they'd pray over me in a heartbeat, so I'd say get a good community, get a good group of guys together. And I think that's what wife needs to encourage that though too, is Kelsey can actually see when I'm like starting to hit the end, and she's like, well, you should probably get your fishing pole, go spend some time.
Yeah.
I mean, do that for you, not for us.
That's good. You guys talked about how you intentionally, date your children. How do you intentionally keep your marriage first as well, with all of the ministry things, with full-time jobs and all of that? What does that look like for y'all?
Date night Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Woo! Tell me about it, girl. Expand upon that.
How long has that? It's been 5 years now? Because Quinley was like 3 months old.
Yep.
Yeah. So
we've probably missed a handful, like 5 or 6 in the last 5 years.
Yeah. So we are
5 or 6, like
that's totally great. That's great.
Our youngest biological, Quinley, she's 5 now, but she screamed for the first 4 months of her life.
Yeah.
She didn't sleep, she didn't eat, she didn't she just screamed.
Yeah.
She was very difficult, and we had to we had one really tough placement kiddo with us at that point. One of the very few that we've had to ask to leave our home, which is a heartbreaking situation. But anyway, so we had her and a second foster child. So we had two 12-year-olds. And then our
two 12-year-old girls. You want to talk about being outnumbered, guys?
A little too much estrogen for you, Chad.
So anyway, so we had all that. We had our Naomi was the 2, Zoe was 1, and then Quinley was a newborn. It was honestly one of the lowest points of my adult life. I mean, it was really tough. It was the most depression I've struggled with and all that. Anyway, so we were sitting in this place of like, we've got to do something. Like, our marriage is struggling. I'm struggling. Our kids are struggling. So we did, like I said, we had to ask for one of our kiddos to be removed from our home, which was kind of one of the practical steps. And then implementing a weekly date night was the big thing that we started then. We did have to go through like 4 different babysitters before we found one that would stick. Yeah. Because they babysit Quinley one time and be like, yeah, no, I'm good.
They lost our number somehow.
Yeah, somehow. I don't know. But that's actually then how we got Brooke. So Brooke is our 22-year-old that moved with us from Oregon, that lives with us now. So she was working in the nursery at church and got Quinley to fall asleep one time. And Chad was like, we need your number. You have
to. We'll pay you whatever. We promise.
Yeah. So we got her then. And let me be honest, like there has been several seasons since then where it's been tough to do a weekly date night, financially, emotionally, I mean, just all kinds of things. But we decided that it was so important that we would cut costs on other things. We would, there were
cheap date or free date nights.
Yeah. There were times I just make dinner at home and like package it up into a thing and take it with, and we'd go sit on the dock at the
Willamette River.
Yeah. At the river and eat dinner. And it was free. Obviously I paid for a babysitter, but there wasn't dinner, there wasn't whatever, but just having that time out of the house without the kids, just the 2 of us, and, just having that solitude has been so important. So yeah, like we said, we've done Wednesday night date night literally every week since then. Yeah, probably missed maybe 5 or so. And that's become just part of our routine. And Brooke has watched the kids every single Wednesday night since then. And that's why we had to have her move to Texas. But it's been so vital. And there's times where our date night is a lot of logistics, especially lately. It's okay. Have you booked flights for, Florida? Nope. Okay, let's book those real quick, or all right, we're going to Nashville. We got to book those. Or, okay, do we have a hotel for this? All right, now, hey, by the way, it's class snack this week, so we need to go to the store and get, snacks or what. So oftentimes it is a lot of those logistics. Yeah. And I know some couples kind of put like rules around their date nights, where it's like, oh, you can't talk about the kids, or you can't talk about this or that. We don't do any of that because I think just because it's part of our weekly routine now.
We don't make that rule.
Yeah. We don't make that rule. So there's, like I said, there's times it's straight logistics, but we're having that time together and doing those things together. But then there's other times where we'll go to Fort Worth and we'll do a big, fancy dinner, or go see a show, or, whatever it may be. So it's kind of a mixture, but that's been a big part of it. And then traveling together too has been a big piece. So we try to get away at least twice a year, ideally more often than that. And sometimes it's, just into Dallas Fort Worth area for kind of a staycation, or sometimes it's we went to Nashville last year. I think.
October.
Yeah. So sometimes it's flying somewhere. Sometimes it's, for my birthday last year, we went down to the coast of Texas and camped on the beach. So just having that like retreat away about twice a year has been a big thing for us too.
Yeah. From a more of a communication side of it, she was talking, it reminded me about the girl that we did have to ask to leave. I think a big thing about keeping, our marriage strong throughout all this stuff is understanding you're on the same team.
So true.
First 2 kids that we got, the family actually came to us that had them before and said, man, they divided and conquered. And well, I'm stubborn. So, so it was crazy because what was happening to them is they were getting divided and conquered. And what was happening to us is every time a situation happened, we came together in our room on our own terms, on our own ground, without a kid in the room, and we talked through it, and we came together to solve the problem. Yeah. So I feel like that's a big thing. You got to understand like the communication side of it, and then you also have to understand your limitations. Yeah. And I think what happened is if this girl, she was past our limitations. Yeah. We aren't doing her any justice if we're accepting somebody into our home that we aren't trained or
able to take care of.
Yeah. So she was beyond our abilities. There's some medical stuff, there's some behavioral stuff that was outside of our realm. And we had to come together and be like, okay, we have to humble ourselves. Like, yes, we want to be a good foster parent for her, but we also understand there's somebody that could be way better than us because outside of our area of expertise. So we've had to do that with a couple that are just out of our expertise, a lot of therapeutic stuff that we're not trained in, and we need to know that. I think what would have happened is if we would have kept her around longer, then it could have caused a lot more stress in our family and our marriage and our life. Than necessary. So know your limitations. So
that's really good. That's really good. And, a door that might be closed for her might be a future door that's open for her. And then also a future door for you guys to invite it's not multiplication always, but, that's sometimes the way with God closes doors, he's opening it up for someone else. So that's a good perspective. Chad, you mentioned kind of at the beginning of the interview, asking or saying to the Lord, God, what do you want to do with me? I think sometimes in our society, we live kind of a selfish life. It's like, okay, I want to do this and I have this dream and this goal. Together, how have you guys postured yourself to do that? For instance, moving from Oregon to Texas, starting advanced camp, what does that posture look like? And is that just like a one-time thing, or is this like a daily, in a sense, surrender and dying to self and saying, Lord, really, what do you want to do with me?
For me, it's daily. When you have so much I wouldn't say at risk, but you got so much going on. I guess the place I put myself mentally is if I try to do it, it could turn out okay if I do this under my own decisions, my own power. But I know that if I do this in God's direction and God's power, it'll always turn out the way, I can literally rest in the place that it'll be a good end all, I don't know, I guess. So Nashville is a good example. As I had a buddy come to me that actually moved from Oregon to Nashville, and he goes, man, you got to come out here. That fatherless out here that really needs your help. Like this community. I said, okay, great. It's everywhere. I said, man, if God opens that door, I'll put on my tennies and I'll run through that door. Yeah. But it doesn't I'm not meant to be there yet. It took us about 6 months of talking and honestly praying about it. And all right, Lord, if you want me there, man, just open doors and I'll do as you ask. And about 6 months into it, I called him up and I said, hey, let's start a conversation. But it was definitely at the time that he brought it up, I'm like, I'm sorry, dude, God is not telling me to do this. I'm Nashville. I love Nashville. I'd go and visit him anytime. I just don't feel like I'm supposed to be there right now. So it very much is a daily thing for me, especially with the ministry itself and trying to balance a family, make sure the family's taken care of in the midst of that. It's definitely a daily thing.
Well, and I feel like too, that sometimes God asks us to take that first step, even if we're not sure. Yeah. There's only been a handful of times that I feel like I've audibly heard God tell me to do something, Yep. And only a few more times where I feel like I'm like, okay, yeah, I think this is what God wants me to do. Sometimes it's something I want to do. And I think that it is in alignment with what God's heart is. Yeah. So sometimes it takes just taking that first step and saying, okay, Lord, I really am passionate about this, or I really think that you might be calling me to something in here. I'm going to go ahead and take this first step and then be open to seeing what he does. And being really sensitive to what that looks like, and is, like Chad said, is he opening those doors? Chad took that first step of hey, let's talk. Let's, start to have these conversations. Okay, well, I firmly believe that if God doesn't want that to happen, then he'll close those doors. And for whatever reason, it'll be difficult to push that forward. But if it's something that he is in, then it's going to start happening. So that's kind of been how we've tried to handle things. The move to Texas, for example, like that was totally a God thing of just like a random, we were on vacation here and we're like, hey, we really like it here. Maybe we should move. And then 6 months later, we're here. And just taking that first step and saying, okay, Lord, like we're gonna pray about this. And for our move specifically, I mean, we spent time in prayer. We spent time asking God to give us confirmation after confirmation after confirmation.
I'm a slow learner. I need a lot of confirmation.
A few times. We spent time fasting. It was literally like, okay, Lord, like that's one where it's like, I'm not really going to take that step because that's a really big step until we know for certain that this is what you want.
I think so good. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I love it when I get to blame it on God, no power. For one, if it fails, it's your fault. And if you succeed, then you get this big head on your shoulders, right? Whereas like Florida, when we launched Florida camp for advanced camp, like I have no excuse besides God.
Yeah.
I made a couple of calls because God laid something in front of me and said, here's somebody to contact. And the first person is a single, mom that runs or a lady that runs the women's portion of the single moms ministry. And literally I reached out to her almost 3 years ago. And that's just literally just kind of laid it out in front of me of like, here, call the Sheridan House. And so I did that. And it's like, but literally doors open, donors came in, resources came in. And I literally I didn't do it. Like, I just everything I did was out of obedience. So people are like, man, how'd you make those connections? I'm like, I don't know where to go with that. And so it's neat to know that if you're resting in it and just letting God do his thing, it's pretty cool to be able to blame it on him. Of this was God's deal, and I'm just get to watch it happen.
So good. I mean, it's obvious too that you don't want to do something without the Lord's direction in that, yes, take those steps, but you're right. It's like, do you want him to open the doors? Do you want the timing to be right? Do you want to have the peace to be able to do it? Because what y'all are taking on every single day in the natural is impossible, right? But because you have prayerfully and, surrendered to the Lord and continue to surrender to the Lord, I think that's what's so important. I love how in the transition from foster care kids to taking a break, you guys have to all get on the same page as a family. You guys got to pray things out, because it's not that you're going to necessarily, you might plan, but you may not do a 20-year plan because you're like, Lord, I want to walk in step with you. I don't want to run ahead and I don't want to be behind. So I'm proud of you guys for that. Okay. We've been like alluding to a little bit about advanced camp. Tell me all about it. I want to know all the things. What is advanced camp?
Okay. Well, this is where
Here we go. Look at that face light up.
Get comfortable. No, I mean, in a nutshell, actually, it's funny. I just had to send a business in Oregon. Our mission statement is we serve fatherless young men between 6th and 12th grade. Tangible skills we feel like a father should have if he was still around, along with the love of Christ. Yeah. So that's kind of overarching what we do. The more finite side of things, we literally teach anything to these young men that we feel like a dad should have. And when I say anything, it's literally anything. We actually implemented RC cars this year that these young men will have to tear an RC car down they could tear it down to the frame and rebuild it. And then we race them, teach them how to do different styles of RC cars. We do welding, blacksmithing, automotive, lawn care,
general contracting,
yeah,
leather working,
bicycle tuning repair. We literally do it all. Yeah. Cooking, barbecuing.
Yeah.
That was actually brought on by a camper. Said, man, we just did cowboy cooking. So all open fire cast iron cooking. He goes, I really want to learn how to grill. I'm like, duh. Like that's something dad would teach you, is how to that's what my dad did. My mom did oven and my dad did barbecue. Like that was just part of our life. It's like, obviously we need to teach grilling. So we do grilling and smoking. We do it all actually, but so that's what we teach. The neat thing about it though, is what we teach is actually just the conduit to create a relationship.
Love
so
it.
The biggest thing that we battle, people always ask me, like, what's the biggest thing that you come across with advanced camp? And it's identity. It's funny because Kelsey talked about that in her first podcast, but really identity is the biggest thing. These young men take the identity from their dad and put it on them, and then that's how they think they're gonna run the rest of their life. And extremely damaging. I had a young man that his dad was convicted of murder, and he ended up isolating himself because he's like, I'm going to become like dad. I was like, sorry, buddy, that's a lie. That's just because you're related to him doesn't mean that's what you're gonna do. So we disconnect him from his biological father and reconnect him to the Lord. So we really need to move him away from this horizontal connection to the vertical connection.
And that's all done through relationships.
That's all done through like conversations, during camp itself. The other big thing that we do with identity is we also take the identity of their biological father that they automatically attach to God. Like,
yes.
My biological father didn't love me. Well, he's only there for me when it's convenient for him. God's only there. He only loves me. He loves everybody, but I'm a little bit lower on his list. And so we move that identity away. So that's another thing that we really do is we speak into identity in these young men's lives, encourage them, let them know they're loved and cared for. That would teach the trades that hopefully will open up opportunities for them for a career later in life. I know one of the things I speak about quite often is teaching trades versus 4-year college degrees. And I think it's a 4-year college degree, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Statistically, 71% of high school dropouts are fathers. They're from fathers. So if you're struggling to get through high school, why would you shove you into a $120,000 4-year college degree?
Right.
It's no sense. We still need plumbers. We still need electricians. We still need concrete guys. We still need welders. Why would we shove you into something that doesn't fit when we can do something that is good paying, that's satisfying, that can be a great career?
Yep.
So we open their eyes to this stuff. We try to teach bicycle tuning repair at a bike shop and automotive at an auto shop. And we're doing blacksmithing in Oregon in January. And we're doing it at a blacksmith, a farrier's shop, actually, and teach them horseshoeing. And so we teach them those things. They'll look and be like, oh, this is awesome. I want to do this for a living. This is incredible. And so we do that to open up their eyes to that. There's multiple layers to advanced camp. People are like, put just this little short, little tip on what it is. I'm like, it's not that short.
Well, and practically, like logistically speaking, here in Texas, they meet once a month on a Saturday. It's a day-long camp. They eat lunch together and then head home just before dinner. And then he launched Florida in September. And that's once a quarter on a Saturday. So he'll fly out to Florida. He's got mentors out there that he's working with, young men out there, that sort of thing. And then Oregon launched in July. Yep. So he flies out to Oregon once a quarter. So it's once a month in Texas, and then once a quarter in Oregon, and once a quarter in Florida.
Yeah.
Oh, it's literally everything that you spoke to. So I've shared parts of my story on this podcast, but my children have a fatherless situation. Their dad passed away in 2015, and then he really wasn't a part of their life. They don't have a lot of memory of the situation. But everything that you said, thinking specifically about my son, he's 14, the identity, the questions that he has, who he feels inadequate when another boy knows how to fix a bike part or knows how to change oil, knows any of those things, change a tire, those kinds of things. So you are speaking to exactly what I have seen and what I've witnessed. So I'm going to ask some questions, not because I'm feeling like this, but the skeptical mom that's listening right now, the skeptical single mom. So question number 1 might be, well, how do I know that I can trust these guys? So how would you respond to that?
Well, there's 2 questions I always get from the moms, and that's one of them. Where do I find my mentors? Mentors here in Texas, it's a little easier. These are guys I do life with, whether I serve with them at the church. I've been on men's ministry trips with them. We do Bible studies together. We've done community group together. So these guys I do life with, and I actually evaluate them for a long time before I ever let them be a mentor. A little different in Florida. I don't know very many of them. So those are all come to me through pastoral or men's ministry groups. And leadership that's sending them to me, not just random people, but it's leadership that's sending them to me.
Yeah.
And then I'll go through what they actually have to process through. In Oregon, 39 years in Oregon, I have connections through different just people I did life with, I grew up with. I used to run advanced camp in Oregon before moving our corporate here to Texas. And I recruited a couple, three of those mentors back up in Oregon. So that's kind of been growing just naturally out of people I know in Oregon. But for the moms,
and mentors don't approach you typically saying, "Hey, I want a mentor."
Not. Yeah. That's kind of creepy to me, to be honest.
Yeah. And if they do, it's okay, great, we can talk, but it's not just an automatic sign up. Chad really seeks out men to mentor individually versus accepting anybody that applies.
Yeah. So once somebody does apply, they have to go through an application online, which is 2 pastoral staff references. Once that happens, then we do either a Zoom call or an in-person interview. If they can pass that, then we do a national background check. So it's a coast-to-coast background check. They do ministry safe certification, so they have to go through that. We have a 14-page policy procedure manual that they have to read through, sign, and date. A year-long commitment letter, so they commit to us at least for a year, a minimum, and then they have liability release form. But I guess the easiest way to say it is I don't make it easy on them. I make them go through some hoops, because if they're going to do it, I need them committed to doing it. That they're intentional about being there. So that's one question I get from a lot of moms is like, well, who is going to be speaking in my lives? And they are all faith-based guys. They go to church. That's part of the process. That's part of the protocol, because they need to be able to speak Jesus into these young men's lives. Standing there or not, like I can't be the voice of everybody. So I need a bunch of Jesus-loving men to step it up. So.
Okay. Question number 2 that runs through kind of that filtered perspective is why does my son need it? Like, if I'm a single mom, then I can be that for them. Why is that important?
Yeah. So I get that often. I don't get it as often as you'd think. At least they don't verbalize it to me. That I'm a mom. I'm a strong mom. I can do it. I can do it all. I said, well, you absolutely can, but you can't be a man.
Yep.
I mean, that's the basics. But what I tell these moms that are kind of battling with that is moms and dads are designed equal but different. Dads are to teach a girl how to love, and a mom is teach a girl how to become a lady. And dad is to teach, mom is to teach the son how to love, and the dad teaches a boy how to become a man. So that's one of them. That's one of the big things I tell them. It's like, hey, it's not like one's greater or less than the other. It's just they both pieces need to be there. So that's one thing I like to focus on a lot. But the crazy thing is I hear from moms all the time, moms or aunts or grandmas, whoever are raising these young men, is what is the deal? What are you guys doing that they're listening to you? I said, don't take it personally. I was actually just talking to a mom about it this morning. I said, don't take it personally, but you got to understand that these young men, when you tell them that you're proud of them or that you love them or that you care about them, they think you're doing it because you have to.
Yeah.
You're the requirement as a mom.
Yep.
So that's the mindset they're at, is they're hearing it because they have to. From us, they're hearing it because they know that we want to. So it's just a different perspective. Moms want to, but that's not how they hear it. That's the filter that they have. The other piece of it is we're a different tone of voice. So I tell moms, I'm like, you got to understand, they're hearing it from mom, they're hearing it from aunt, they're hearing it from grandma, they're hearing it from the teacher. Those are all women's voices. And also women's voice comes in there with a different temperament or a different tone. And it's just, it's like all of a sudden tone deaf is gone. Like, oh, who's this is talking to me? And so it's just, you do need that. Also, we went through an intentional parenting class, and there's a switch at a certain age with kids that switches from who's the disciplinary and who's the friend, that switches. And at about, I think it's 8 or 10, it switches to the dad being the disciplinary. Well, if the mom stays the friend the whole time, or mom stays the disciplinary the whole time, there can be some struggles that mom deals with.
The other thing too is guys need that shoulder to shoulder.
Yep.
They need to be working on a car together. They need to be, cooking dinner on the grill together side by side. That's a posture of a lot of men is, they'll talk when they're like this. Women want to talk when you're like this, And so for the young men, a lot of that conversation can happen because they're tearing apart a carburetor. And so, they're figuring it out, or I mean, Chad's told stories of young men being triggered by different things at camp and having to go remove themselves from the situation because they all of a sudden had a memory from doing something similar, changing the oil or whatever it may be with their dad, and that triggers things. Well, then it creates an opportunity for a man that's a different man to come and speak into that and say, hey, let's create a different memory, or give the space for him to unpack that a conversation over coffee that wouldn't have ever happened, and so that shoulder to shoulder time with guys, I think, is so important. And I'll also say too, is oftentimes the moms that don't understand the value, once their son goes to camp one time, then they understand the value. He gets texts all the time of the confidence my son has is incredible after one camp, or he came home and started working on our lawn, right after camp or whatever. He's got the biggest smile on his face, whatever it may be. And so it's like, once they do that one time, then they're like, all right, I get it.
Yeah. We had a mom in Florida, just, I just did my email to invite all the young men to come back to our next camp. And she goes, man, he's coming back. Like, you don't understand that he went to one camp and he came out of a shell after one camp. I'm like, I don't feel like we did anything special, but we invited them. We worked on a bike with him. He actually got to take a bike home because he didn't have one at home and we had somebody donate them. And so, it's crazy like what one camp can do.
So one other thing that I wanted to point out was, the other thing too is, so you have, I don't know, probably a handful of women that have contacted him that are homosexual. And so they're either married to a woman or dating another woman, that kind of thing. So 2 women in the house. Even them come to Chad and say they need a man my son needs a man in his life. Yeah. And so even 2 women who, that's the choices that they have made, they still see that need. And their son comes to camp and their son is fueled in a different way than their moms at home do, so even in that situation, they still see the fruit of a man talking to a young man.
I love it.
So it's kind of funny that you say that. So that sparked my my memory on something. So one of the other things that helps keep our marriage strong is we do go to marriage counseling, and it's kind of like it's like you do a tune-up and oil changes on cars. So we're doing a tune-up and oil change on our marriage, and just make sure things are going good and communication's good. Well, our counselor is a Christian counselor. She goes, hey, have you ever seen that article about the transfer of testosterone? I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. She goes, no, there's a college that did a study. And when an older man sits next to a younger man and works on a project together, there's actually a physical transfer of testosterone.
Wow.
So this younger man is like gaining testosterone to become a man by doing something next to a man. And I thought that was really cool.
That's
I'm like,
crazy. God is crazy the way he works. Oh my gosh.
The scary part of it is I had a mom in Oregon that came to me and said, I don't get it. I need my son to come to camp. He's feminine. And she goes, I don't get it. I work on cars. I shoot guns. I'm a better shot with a pistol than most men I know, which are more focused with guns than men are. So she's like, I don't get it. I can start a campfire. Like I go camping. I chop wood. I started thinking, as soon as she said that, this study was done, a light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, he's working on projects and gaining estrogen instead of testosterone. I'm like, that now it's starting to make sense. So I was like, okay, that like things are starting to click here for me. And so, that's part of it is like, we don't spread out when we do camp. We don't spread out and go all over the place. No, I'm literally, if I'm fishing, I gotta do close enough that I can touch his shoulder. Like it's all shoulder to shoulder next to each other, doing what I say dude stuff. Doing guy stuff, getting dirty, smelling like 2-stroke gasoline engine oil afterwards. It's like doing that next to another guy is growing them up into a man.
So good. So if I have some single mamas watching and they're like, okay, how do I get involved? What does that process look like for my son? What can we do?
So the process for a mom is way simpler than becoming a mentor. First, I want to preface it with camp is totally free for single moms. There is absolutely no cost for them. And when I mean no cost, if we do fishing and they need a fishing license, if we do hunting and they need a hunting license, if we do an activity and there's equipment needed, that is literally all paid for. So that's why we get private donors or churches that partner with us to be able to provide us to be able to do that. So moms, if money is an issue, money is not an issue. That is never an excuse with us. So to get involved, there's really a couple of ways. They can go onto our website and just request information, just contact us. Hey, I'm interested in my 13-year-old son becoming part of camp. That initiates a conversation via email or text message to set up a time to have that kind of intake conversation. And that's really just to say, this is what we do at camp. This is what you can expect from camp. This is what we talk about at camp. This is what we expect of your son at camp. They can say that works for me, or they say that doesn't work. That's not going to really it's not going to fit. I've had some moms. I tell them we do it on the second Saturday of every month. They're like, second Saturday is dad visits. For us. And I've had others that, man, I can't even get my first line out. And they're like, done, we'll sign him up. He'll be there. Prayer. And I've had moms on the phone crying with me because they're like, seriously, Chad, like I literally been searching for this for years for my son. Yeah. So that initial conversation happens. If everything's good to go, everything's what they want it to be, it looks like it's going to work good from our side as well. Then I send them paperwork, and they have 2 pieces of paperwork to fill out. One's a medical liability release form, just saying if something happens, we can go get them taken care of. The other one is an application, and we actually ask the son to fill that out. Mass majority of it, at least. It just says why they want to come to camp, what's their shirt size, what do you have any siblings, what grade are you in, that kind of stuff. It's just kind of lighter. And then once that's done, we get on a phone call, and we do a 3-way phone call, me, mom, and son. And I did about 18 years of outside sales. So this is when I put my sales hat on and tell these young men about what we do and why we do what we do and what the activities we do. And because some of these young men are like, man, I'm not going. Mom's making me.
Literally just going to ask that question next. What do you do in that situation if the mom is excited about it and the son's like, I don't need that and I'm not interested in that stuff? Because I think in my son's situation, when he feels inadequate in a certain area, building, or any of those areas that we've talked about, I won't be able to catch the fish in front of everybody because I don't know how to do it. Then they pull back and the walls come up. So what do you do? What do you do in that situation?
So that's it's, I've always said, well, man, I am done with sales. I still don't want to be in sales. Like, you'll always be in sales. And so I tell moms that before getting the young man on the phone, I will tell mom, I will do a sales pitch here. Even if they are interested, like this is my time to put on my sales hat and share with them about what we do, why we do what we do. Explain what the topics are. I'll ask them what they want to learn. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, I want to do fishing. I'm like, great. I actually have it scheduled later this year. I'm not going to tell you which weekend because it's a surprise, but we will be doing that. And so it starts kind of getting them going. I've had some young men that said, nope, not coming. Grandma made me pick up this phone. It was a guy that was raised by his grandma and great grandma. He goes, Grandma made me pick up the phone and talk to you. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let's hear about you and share about camp. And he goes, no, I'm not coming. Like, they're making me be there. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, dude, that's part of our rule. You have to want to be there. You can't be forced to be there because we do dangerous stuff, and I can't have somebody hurt or create an unsafe environment. You go, whoa, wait. You do
dangerous stuff. What? Are you blowing something up?
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. We do welding, we do archery, we shoot guns, we do blacksmithing. I said, dude, blacksmithing, we're working with 1200 degree metal. Like, if you mess up, you're gonna hurt. Mm-hmm. We shoot guns. If you aren't being wise, injuries can happen. He goes, oh, I'm in. I'm like, really? I just had to say we do stuff. So it's it is my time to turn on the salesman and sell these young men on why they want to be there. The inadequacy, we actually talked about that this morning at my men's Bible study group of young men and their inadequacies and how much pushback. So I'll be definitely more in tune with that going forward. But it's always been about these young men feeling included, involved, and not singled out. Because that's the other thing I get is like, man, I don't want to show up and be the only one there without a dad.
It's literally everyone.
You're all that way, right?
Yeah.
And so it's funny. We're sitting at in Oregon. We did our serve camp, this last camp in October. It was with a single mom. We did her lawn, and she's talking about, raising her son on her own. And one of the other guys, the other mentors, like, yeah, I was raised, or his wife was a single mom for a bit. And he goes, this kid looks at me and goes, hey, my mom's a single mom too. And we all kind of stop and look around and we're like, buddy, you're with company, man.
Yeah.
All the young men around here are with single moms. And it was just one of those moments of like, wow, I'm not unusual. Like, I'm not left out. Like, I'm part of something now. And so I really try to impress that on these young men that they're part of something, like, that they don't have to feel like less,
You mentioned, go ahead, Kelsey, what were you going to say?
Chad doesn't tell the young men. The moms know, but the young men don't know what camp is going to be. So they can't pick and choose, like, oh, I want to learn about fishing, but I don't want to learn about blacksmithing, or whatever. Like, it's either you're in or you're not. And so that also creates kind of a like excitement, anticipation. Like, I wonder what camp is going to be. So,
oh yeah, they love it. Yeah, that Christmas morning excitement.
Yeah.
You mentioned the way for a single mom to, go through the process is to go to your website. Just because people might be listening or driving, what is your website? We'll make sure and put it in the show notes as well.
Sure, it's www and then advancedcampusa.com. So advanced, there's no D at the end, so it's advancedcampusa.com.
Perfect. And maybe we don't have single moms. Maybe we have people that are like, I believe in this. Can I donate somewhere? How do they do that?
Same website. You on same website and then go under give. They can do it that way. And if I do have some guys that give monthly that prefer to write a check, and they can reach out to me through our website. I can get them our PO box, so they can do it that way. But or if there's some guys that's listening to this that says, man, I have a heart for this. Like, I want to see what it look like to be a product knowledge expert and to be able to say, hey, I'm a blacksmith by trade. I love to serve, especially young men. Like, I want to teach them what I'm doing, so this trade doesn't die. They say, I got a resource, and then that's a good way to reach out as well.
I love it. Go ahead.
You can give one time or you can do a monthly donation. So the goal of the monthly donations is to cover the cost of camp for each camper, is really how that's set up. So that's in there too.
So good. You guys, thank you so much for just all that you're doing and giving us some words of wisdom on how to navigate it as a family and doing ministry. Just so grateful for this time and excited for all of you that are watching and listening to be able to maybe look into foster care, maybe look into if you know a single mom who could use advanced camp for her kiddo and just all these things. This has been a good, rich conversation. Thank you for reminding us to put your marriage first, put your relationship with the Lord first, and then He's going to put everything together. So I thank you for that. So thank you for your time today, guys. I appreciate you.